Shalom, brothers and sisters, and welcome to Greater Exodus Prep, where it's our goal to equip the body of Messiah spiritually, physically, and mentally to endure to the end of the Greater Exodus. This is part 4 of the Legality of the Gospel. If you've not yet watched parts 1 through 3, you need to go back and do that first before continuing on. Otherwise, please enjoy the Legality of the Gospel, part 4, Northern Kingdom Iniquity. In this fourth part, we're still continuing to build our answer to question number 1. Legally, how can someone die for the sins of another? We'll be doing this by looking at the iniquity of the northern kingdom of Israel. First, I'm going to start by sharing some history of how we even got to there being a northern kingdom of Israel. And then we'll move on to identify the specific iniquity that they were guilty of. From there, we'll look at what the Father did in response to their sin with divine consequences. And parents, before we begin, I wanted to make you aware that due to the graphic nature of some of the content that we'll be covering in Section B, Iniquity Identification, that section may not be suitable for younger children. With that out of the way, let's begin with some history. Due to the famine in Israel and Joseph being second in command in Egypt, Israel, or Jacob, moves his family to Egypt. While in Egypt, Israel elevates and blesses Joseph's sons. Genesis 48:5. And now thy 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, which were born unto thee in the land of Egypt before I came unto thee into Egypt, are mine, as Reuben and Simeon. They shall be mine. After several hundred years of slavery, the children of Israel leave Egypt as a nation. They go from 70 souls to possibly 2 million or more during that time. After they leave Egypt, Israel is unified for 516 years. The reason that the word unified is in quotes is that yes, they left Egypt as a nation and remained as a single nation for those entire 516 years. But I acknowledge that there were squabbles amongst various tribes, and then specifically during the transition of power from King Saul to King David, David ruled specifically over the tribe of Judah before the rest of the tribes submitted to his kingship. That's what I mean by the quotes. And for those of you nerds out there, here's how I came up with my number of 516 years. I'll leave that on the screen for a moment so you can pause it, jot down some of the scripture, and then we're going to move on. Let's continue. Then we come to the issue of Solomon's sin. 1 Kings 2, 1 through 4. Now the days of David drew nigh that he should die, and he charged Solomon his son, saying, I go the way of all the earth. Be thou strong therefore, and show thyself a man, and keep the charge of Jehovah thy God, to walk in his ways, to keep his statutes and his commandments, and his judgments and his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, that thou mayest prosper in all that thou doest, and whithersoever thou turnest thyself, that Jehovah may continue his word which he spake concerning me, saying, If thy children take heed to their way, to walk before me in truth, with all their heart and with all their soul, there shall not fail thee, said he, a man on the throne of Israel. Before David dies, he recounts in the ears of Solomon the covenant that God made with him concerning his rulership over the land of Israel, and that it was contingent on obedience to following God's ways and God's laws. Solomon did good for a while, but unfortunately, he fell short of what he was supposed to do. 1 Kings 11, 11 through 13. Wherefore Jehovah said unto Solomon, Forasmuch as this is done of thee, and thou hast not kept my covenant and my statutes, which I have commanded thee, I will surely rend the kingdom from thee, and will give it to thy servant. Notwithstanding, in thy days I will not do it for David thy father's sake. but I will rend it out of the hand of thy son. Howbeit I will not rend away all the kingdom, but will give one tribe to thy son for David my servant's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, which I have chosen." Because of Solomon's sin, Israel is divided into two kingdoms. There will be a split of 10 tribes and 2 tribes. I realize from the language of the verse that we just read, it sounds like only one tribe was going to Solomon's son, but it was one tribe for David and one tribe for Jerusalem. This will make more sense as we read the next passage. 1 Kings 11, 26 through 39. And Jeroboam the son of Nebat, an Ephrathite of Zeredah, Solomon's servant, whose mother's name was Zeruiah, a widow woman, even he lifted up his hand against the king. And this was the cause that he lifted up his hand against the king. Solomon built Millo and repaired the breaches of the city of David his father. And the man Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor. And Solomon, seeing the young man that he was industrious, he made him ruler over all the charge of the house of Joseph. And it came to pass that at that time when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem, that the prophet Ahijah the Shilonite found him in the way, and he had clad himself with a new garment, and they two were alone in the field. And Ahijah caught the new garment that was on him, and rent it in 12 pieces. And he said to Jeroboam, "Take thee 10 pieces, for thus saith Jehovah, the God of Israel, Behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and will give 10 tribes to thee. But he shall have 1 tribe for my servant David's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. Because that they have forsaken me, and have worshipped Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Zidonians, Chemosh, the god of the Moabites, and Milcom, the god of the children of Ammon, and have not walked in my ways, to do that which is right in mine eyes, and to keep my statutes and my judgments, as did David his father. Howbeit I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him prince all the days of his life for David my servant's sake, whom I chose, because he kept my commandments and my statutes. But I will take the kingdom out of his son's hand, and will give it unto thee, even 10 tribes. And unto his son will I give 1 tribe, that David my servant may have a light alway before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen me to put my name there. And I will take thee, and thou shalt reign according to all that thy soul desireth, and shalt be king over Israel. And it shall be, if thou wilt hearken unto all that I command thee, and wilt walk in my ways, and do that which is right in my sight, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did, that I will be with thee, and build thee a sure house as I built for David, and will give Israel unto thee. And I will for this afflict the seed of David, but not forever." Because of Solomon's sin, unified Israel is divided into 2 kingdoms. There's the southern kingdom of Judah, which was comprised of 2 territorial tribes, Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. Levites also predominantly stayed in the south so that they could serve and minister in the temple at Jerusalem. The largest of the 2 tribes was Judah, hence the southern kingdom of Judah was named after this larger tribe. The capital was retained at Jerusalem. And here are some alternate names that the Bible uses for the southern kingdom of Judah. It is sometimes called the house of Judah, as in Isaiah 22:21. "And I will clothe him with thy robe, and strengthen him with thy girdle, and I will commit thy government into his hand, and he shall be a father to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and to the house of Judah." Other times the southern kingdom is simply just called Judah. Isaiah 1:1. The vision of Isaiah the son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. You'll also see it called the land of Judah, as in Jeremiah 40 verse 12. Even all the Jews returned out of all places whither they were driven, and came to the land of Judah, to Gedaliah, to Mizpah and gathered wine and summer fruits very much. The people of Judah later became known as the Jews. 2 Kings 16:6. At that time Rezin, king of Syria, recovered Elath to Syria, and drave the Jews from Elath, and the Syrians came to Elath and dwelt there unto this day. I shared this verse with you specifically because this is the verse where the Jews are mentioned for the very first time in all of Scripture. Of the thousands of years that are recorded and all the events that took place, this in 2 Kings 16:6 is the first mention of the Jews. Let's move on. Now we come to the northern kingdom of Israel, which was composed of the remaining 10 tribes that were given land. So not the Levites. The Levites primarily remained with the kingdom of Judah. The largest tribe was Ephraim, and of note, the very first king of the northern kingdom was from the tribe of Ephraim. The northern kingdom actually had a couple different capitals throughout their history, but their final one was in Samaria. So I have that one listed as the capital. Some alternate names of the northern kingdom of Israel are the house of Israel, as in Jeremiah 5:11. For the house of Israel and the house of Judah have dealt very treacherously against me, saith Jehovah. Notice the contrast with house of Israel against the house of Judah. This is some of how we know that it's talking about the divided kingdom. Occasionally they are called the house of Joseph, as in Zechariah 10:6. And I will strengthen the house of Judah, and I will save the house of Joseph, and will bring them again to place them, for I have mercy upon them, and they shall be as though I had not cast them off. For I am Jehovah their God, and will hear them. Sometimes the northern kingdom is simply called Joseph. Ezekiel 37:16. Moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick and write upon it for Judah and for the children of Israel his companions. Then take another stick and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel his companions. Occasionally, Scripture refers to the northern kingdom of Israel as Ephraim. Isaiah 7:9. And the head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is Ramallah's son. If ye will not believe, surely ye shall not be established. Then, just to make things extra confusing, sometimes the northern kingdom of Israel is referred to simply as Israel. Jeremiah 30, verse 3. For lo, the days come, saith Jehovah, that I will bring again the captivity of my people Israel and Judah, saith Jehovah. And I will cause them to return to the land that I gave to their fathers, and they shall possess it. That is an extraordinarily condensed history of Israel that finally culminates with the division of the northern and southern kingdom. So hopefully you understand the distinction there. And I might add, it's very important that you know the alternate names that the northern kingdom of Israel was called by as you're reading throughout the prophets. This will help you identify what God is talking about in certain points and what parts apply to them and which parts apply to just the southern kingdom. With this out of the way, we can now go on to the iniquity identification. Despite the Most High promising to establish Jeroboam and his line of kingship over the northern kingdom of Israel if he would obey him, it didn't take Jeroboam very long at all to fall into egregious sin. Let's read about the sin of Jeroboam. 1 Kings 12:26 through 33. And Jeroboam said in his heart, Now shall the kingdom return to the house of David. If this people go up to do sacrifice in the house of Jehovah at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of this people turn again unto their Lord, even unto Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they shall kill me, and go again to Rehoboam, king of Judah. Whereupon the king took counsel, and made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And he set the one in Bethel, and the other he put in Dan. And this thing became a sin. For the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan. And he made an house of high places, and made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not of the sons of Levi. And Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah. And he offered upon the altar. So did he in Bethel, sacrificing unto the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priest of the high places which he had made. So he offered upon the altar which he had made in Bethel, the 15th day of the 8th month, even in the month which he had devised of his own heart, and ordained a feast unto the children of Israel, and he offered upon the altar and burnt incense. Unfortunately, through the sad history of all the kings of the northern kingdom of Israel, Scripture makes a point, almost without exception, to record that every single one of these kings participated in the sin of Jeroboam. Look at every single one on your screen. Feel free to check every single passage, and you will find some mention to the way of Jeroboam, the sin of Jeroboam, the iniquity of Jeroboam. There's only 4 of these kings that I could find that didn't have some allusion to the sin of Jeroboam mentioned with their kingship. This was normally due to the extremely short time that they ruled, sometimes just a few months, or if there was a coup to overthrow someone and other big event going on, this was not recorded. However, Scripture doesn't give even these men a pass. Let's read that bottom passage in bold as a summary statement for the actions of all the kings of Israel. 2 Kings 17:21 and 22. For he rent Israel from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king. And Jeroboam drave Israel from following Jehovah, and made them sin a great sin. For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam which he did. They departed not from them. Every single one continued this sin of false worship from the very first king until the Assyrians came and sacked the northern kingdom of Israel. Now you may be thinking that it's fairly obvious that the iniquity of the northern kingdom of Israel was idolatry. And you'd be right. But you'd also be wrong. What do I mean by that? Well, recall in part 2, we mentioned that the physical and the spiritual are entwined. You cannot separate the two. What you do in one echoes into the other. Although it was the physical act of idolatry, although they were physically going to high places, physically made golden calves, physically bowed down to them, physically feasted at the wrong time, physically brought in false priests so that they would not worship properly, that physical sin of idolatry echoed differently in the spiritual realm. In the last part, I talked about how we'd elaborate more on the duty of marriage. Now is that time. Here's what you have to understand. Physical worship is the same thing as spiritual sex. When I mentioned that the Most High performed his duty of marriage, I'm referring to the type of worship that he gave his people. If you look at the types of worship that all the other pagan nations who were worshiping their gods participated in, there was a lot of human sacrifice, blood drinking, prostitution, all sorts of abominable things. The Most High did not have his people worship him in that way. No one had to give up their child to be slaughtered on an altar or to be burned in the hands of a god with a bull on his head. That wasn't the type of sex that the Most High had with his people. It wasn't cruel. It was beautiful. It was loving. It was intimate. We're going to read a passage from Hosea 3. Keep in mind, the whole book of Hosea is a metaphor of the relationship of the Most High with Israel. This is why we're going to be revisiting this book time and time again, because of its applicability to what we're talking about. Hosea 3:3 and 4. And I said unto her, Thou shalt abide for me many days. Thou shalt not play the harlot, and thou shalt not be for another man. So will I also be for thee. For the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king, and without a prince, and without a sacrifice, and without an image, and without an ephod, and without teraphim. In case you're a little vague on what this passage is actually talking about, allow me to interpret for you. Gomer, the wife of Hosea, has gone out and had sex with a bunch of different men. She has gone and been a whore. Hosea redeems her, brings her back, sits her down, and says, You're going to stop being a whore. Here's what we're going to do. You are not to have sex with any other men. You're not even going to have sex with me until you learn to calm down. In verse 4, Hosea then gives us an alternating list of different types of worship. He says that this is to show that the children of Israel will go a long time without a king. There's only one true king. He says they'll go a long time without a prince. What is it those high-level angelic beings were called? Ah, yes, they're called princes. Then he goes back to the king column and says, you will go a long time without a sacrifice, and then an image, and then an ephod, and then teraphim. Do you see what's going on here? True worship, worship of the one true God, the true King of Israel, involves God-sanctioned sacrifice and ephod, which was an article of clothing of the high priest, whereas worship of the princes, false worship, involves images or pillars and teraphim, household gods. This is the same word that's used when Rachel stole the household idols from Laban, her father, and lied to him, saying she couldn't stand up because it was her time of the month. It's the same word. Hosea is comparing and contrasting true worship and false worship. So he's telling Gomer, you're not going to have sex with any other man. False worship. You're not even going to have sex with me. True worship. Israel's going to go a long time without either. Without pure true worship or without pure false worship. It's not just this one passage. God routinely uses sexual language to describe Israel's sin. Hosea 5:3. I know Ephraim, and Israel is not hid from me. For now, O Ephraim, thou committest whoredom, and Israel is defiled. Ezekiel 23:2-4. Son of man, there were two women, the daughters of one mother, and they committed whoredoms in Egypt. They committed whoredoms in their youth. There were their breasts pressed, and there they bruised the teats of their virginity. And the names of them were Aholah the elder, and Aholibah her sister, and they were mine, and they bare sons and daughters. Thus were their names. Samaria is Aholah, and Jerusalem is Aholibah. Ezekiel 16:25. Thou hast built thy high place at every head of the way, and hast made thy beauty to be abhorred, and hast opened thy feet to every one that passed by, and multiplied thy whoredoms. Ezekiel 16:32-33. But as a wife that committeth adultery, which taketh strangers instead of her husband, they give gifts to all whores, but thou givest thy gifts to all thy lovers, and hirest them, that they may come unto thee on every side for thy whoredom. Jeremiah 3:8-9. And I saw when for all the causes whereby backsliding Israel committed adultery, I had put her away and given her a bill of divorce, yet her treacherous sister Judah feared not, but went and played the harlot also. And it came to pass through the lightness of her whoredom that she defiled the land and committed adultery with stones and with stocks. This is extraordinarily graphic language that the Most High is using to describe the sin of his wife. Notice how it transitions from you're being a whore to you are committing adultery. As a woman, as a wife, you are cheating on me. It was so bad. He said, you open your feet to everyone that comes by. Can you hear the agony in the Most High's voice as he is communicating this through the prophets? He says, you're so much of a whore, you don't even get paid for what you do. He said, you pay your lovers and then you give them exactly what they want. You're disgusting. That is what the Most High had to endure. No. The iniquity of the northern kingdom was not idolatry. The iniquity of the northern kingdom was adultery. This is what it was to the Most High. In part 3, I also mentioned if you weren't convinced that it was a legal marriage covenant between Jehovah and Israel, this is another element of proof. You cannot commit adultery against someone if you are not married to them. This was a legal marriage covenant. Israel was Jehovah's wife. Notice the passage in Ezekiel 23. It says there were 2 daughters that came from one mother. The mother was a unified Israel. But when the kingdom split, that's when the 2 daughters were born. I hope that makes sense. Even with the splitting of the kingdom, it was almost as though the Most High had 2 different wives now. And both of them committed whoredom. But for Israel, something happened to them that did not happen to the southern kingdom of Judah. For that, let's move on to our final section, divine consequences. Because of the overt and intentional adultery committed against the Most High by the northern kingdom of Israel, divine consequences would have to be meted out. But before we get into those, first you have to understand, Jehovah is a merciful God. Exodus 34, 6-7. And Jehovah passed by before him and proclaimed, Jehovah, Jehovah God, merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abundant in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, and that will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, and upon the children's children, unto the 3rd and to the 4th generation. Joel 2:13. And rend your heart and not your garments, and turn unto Jehovah your God, for he is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and of great kindness, and repenteth him of the evil. Because Jehovah was legally married to the northern kingdom of Israel, there were 2 legal options that the Most High had for the sin of adultery. First, he could have his adulterous bride put to death. Leviticus 20 verse 10. And the man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that committeth adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. And the second option, he could issue her a bill of divorce. Deuteronomy 24:1. When a man hath taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he hath found some uncleanness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement, and give it in her hand, and send her out of his house. Don't be thrown off by the word uncleanness in that verse. This isn't something to where a husband on a whim could just arbitrarily decide to divorce his wife. No, this word is specifically about exposing your private areas. This is about committing adultery with someone else. Adultery is the only legal justification for a bill of divorcement in the Torah. And it turns out it is the more merciful option. This is the one that Jehovah chose for his bride. Jeremiah 3 verse 8. And I saw when for all the causes whereby backsliding Israel committed adultery, I had put her away and given her a bill of divorce. Yet her treacherous sister Judah feared not, but went and played the harlot also. According to Deuteronomy 24:1, there are three legal components to a bill of divorce. First, the bill of divorcement must be written out. In order for Jeremiah to say that Jehovah divorced the northern kingdom, it says he wrote her a bill of divorce. That means the divorce had to be written down somewhere prior to Jeremiah. I submit to you, the bill of divorce was in Hosea chapter 2. Hosea 2:2. Plead with your mother, plead, for she is not my wife, neither am I her husband. Let her therefore put away her whoredoms out of her sight, and her adulteries from between her breasts. When Hosea is writing this, the northern kingdom still exists. Jeremiah is writing in the future, well after the northern kingdom has already been divorced. He's writing right at the end where Judah is taken captive. And so at this time frame, he's looking back a couple hundred years and realizes a bill of divorce has been written. Let's read another quote from David Instone Brewer. The written divorce certificate which Jeremiah refers to is presumably the written record of Hosea 2:2. She is not my wife, and I am not her husband. This is the written version of an ancient Near Eastern verbal formula for divorce. This formula is found in the Jewish elephantine divorce certificates of the 5th century BCE and in older sources from other cultures. Of the few surviving parchments and cuneiform tablets that have recorded bills of divorce on them, this type of language, you are not my wife, I am not your husband, this is language that was used in these legal documents. This is the exact language that the Most High uses when talking about the northern kingdom. So I submit to you, Hosea 2:2 is the written bill of divorce. The second requirement of a written bill of divorce is that it must be delivered to the bride. Since it was written in the book Hosea, it was obviously delivered by the prophet Hosea. And then third, the wife is to be sent out of the house. Notice it says sent out of the house, not asked to leave. Sent out. 2 Kings 17:20 through 23. And Jehovah rejected all the seed of Israel and afflicted them, and delivered them into the hand of spoilers until he had cast them out of his sight. For he rent Israel from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king. And Jeroboam drave Israel from following Jehovah, and made them sin a great sin. For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam which he did. They departed not from them, until Jehovah removed Israel out of his sight, as he said by all his servants the prophets. So Israel was carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. This divorce cost the northern kingdom of Israel more than they could imagine. First, they lost the blessings of marriage. In part 3, if you recall, according to Exodus 21:10, there are 3 legal rights of marriage that a husband is to give his wife: food, raiment, and the duty of marriage. Exodus 21:10. If he take him another wife, her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage shall he not diminish. I also shared with you previously how the Most High extravagantly bestowed the blessings of marriage onto his bride. Ezekiel 16:13 describes the food. Thou didst eat fine flour and honey and oil. Ezekiel 16:10 through 12 describe the clothing, broidered work, badger skin, fine linen, ornaments, silk, bracelets, jewels, earrings, a beautiful crown. And Ezekiel 16:8 describes the duty of marriage. Behold, thy time was the time of love, and I spread my skirt over thee. If Hosea 2:2 is the written marriage divorce, it makes sense that Hosea chapter 2 would be where we would see recorded these 3 legal rights and blessings of marriage would be revoked. Food and raiment were both revoked in Hosea 2:9. Therefore will I return, and take away my corn in the time thereof, and my wine in the season thereof, and will recover my wool and my flax given to cover her nakedness. And then the duty of marriage, the sexual relations between husband and wife, spiritually, that would be worship. That was revoked in Hosea 2:11. I will also cause all her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts. As you might expect, after losing the blessings of marriage, Israel would also lose their national and ethnic identity. They would have their name changed, if you will. Isaiah 7:8. For the head of Syria is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. And within 65 years shall Ephraim be broken, that it be not a people. Did you catch that? The Most High said to the prophet Isaiah, who was concurrent with the prophet Hosea, who was writing the bill of divorce, he said within 65 years of Isaiah writing what he wrote, that Israel would be broken, that they be not a people. They are no longer a distinct people group, and it's prophesied that they would forget who they are. Zechariah 10:7-9. And they of Ephraim shall be like a mighty man, and their heart shall rejoice as through wine. Yea, their children shall see it and be glad. Their heart shall rejoice in Jehovah. I will hiss for them and gather them, for I have redeemed them, and they shall increase as they have increased. And I will sow them among the people, and they shall remember me in far countries, and they shall live with their children and turn again. Deuteronomy 30:1. And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations, whither Jehovah thy God hath driven thee. Notice the last two passages speak of a remembering, a calling to mind that Israel or Ephraim would have when they're scattered to the nations. They remember who they are because they had previously forgotten. They lost the blessings of marriage. They lost their national and ethnic identity. But third and worst of all, they can never again be remarried to Jehovah. Deuteronomy 24:2-4. And when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife. And if the latter husband hate her, and write her a bill of divorcement, and giveth it in her hand, and sendeth her out of his house, or if the latter husband die, which took her to be his wife, her former husband which sent her away may not take her again to be his wife, after that she is defiled. For that is abomination before Jehovah. And thou shalt not cause the land to sin, which Jehovah thy God giveth thee for an inheritance. It is an abomination before the Most High for a divorced wife to remarry her former husband. This means that no one descended from the northern kingdom of Israel can ever come back into covenant with Jehovah. 2 Kings 17:20. And Jehovah rejected all the seed of Israel, and afflicted them, and delivered them into the hand of spoilers, until he had cast them out of his sight. Let's review this section, Northern Kingdom, Iniquity. We looked at the history that got us to the Northern Kingdom, and explored the sin of Jeroboam. What was that sin? We identified their iniquity as adultery. Then as a result, the divine consequence of divorce caused the loss of the blessings of marriage, a loss of national and ethnic identity for the Northern Kingdom. But third and worst of all, they can never again be remarried to their former husband. This is truly devastating news for anyone descended from the Northern Kingdom of Israel. but yet hope is found in a very unlikely place in the Torah. Let's move on to part 5, Vows of Women.